New week on the call up here, and it is a Labor Day Monday. Hope you're enjoying it. We're recording this right at about 11 on Monday, so you might be listening on Tuesday. Wouldn't blame you. You're probably not doing your morning commute that you might be doing, or you might just be out at the beach or doing anything else. Again, don't blame you, but we have some catching up to do. So the least we could do is get this episode out on this Monday, but we're going to get 3 out this week. Of course, I'm Aram Layton. He's Jack McMullen. There's plenty to catch up on always, but when we only get one episode out the week before, there's even more. So we are going to hit on several different topics, which I'm excited to get into, whether it be a couple big league promotions, a couple minor league promotions, and then just some storylines. I've been wanting to just check in on storylines, whether that be like a Noah Schultz and how much more run does he have? He's been great again for the White Sox, but, do they shut him down sometime soon? And then some other notable stories that I just kind of wanted to highlight and discuss. Before we get into all that, I just did want to kind of peel back the curtain here over the last week. It has been a crazy range of emotions for sure, and a crazy stretch. Obviously, last time we checked in, I was in Denver, and it was one of the best experiences I think I've ever had at a baseball field, watching my good buddy Griffin Conine make his big league debut and achieve his dreams. And when I was flying back, unfortunately got news that my grandmother had passed away, who had watched both of us play a lot growing up. And I'm pretty sure my grandma, Clara was her name, would she would listen to the Just Baseball show because she was a sports fan. But she always asked me, how can I help? And I was like, oh, Grandma, you don't have to worry about it. Just like, if you ever meet a baseball fan, tell them about the show. She's like, is there any other way I can help? I'm like, well, technically speaking, she was tech savvy for an 89-year-old woman. I was like, if you just let the podcast run, you don't even need to listen, but that technically would be a listen for us. So she just started letting him run all the time on her phone. And I just tell that because like that's just like how she was. She's just always looking for a way to help. And I was her only grandson, so a very special bond. Of course, we might have talked about my grandpa George, who my middle name's after, is a big reason why I'm a baseball fan, along with my dad. Saw Jeter's last game with him. He's from the Bronx, so a lot of sports in my family. My grandma was, that mama bear with her cubs, and it just was a wild week when you have the highs like that, and then obviously a really significant low on the way home. But just wanted to, apologize. I know everyone's going to say it's okay, but I just wanted to explain, why we only had one episode out. Usually, as we were talking about it before we record, like we would let people know if we're only going to get one out in a week. So obviously we didn't know how that week was going to go, and what was going to happen there. So we weren't able to forewarn. So I appreciate everybody hanging out with one episode last week. We'll make up for it on this front. And, I know my grandma, if there's one thing about her, head down, a hard worker, Armenian woman whose family came over here. She's going to say, make up for those episodes, baby. So that's what we're going to do this week. And, yeah, Jack, I appreciate you letting me just kind of go on a little bit there about my grandma Clara, who was strong woman and a loving woman. And, always told me you're never too old for grandma's hugs, and you're definitely never too old for grandma's hugs. So appreciate your family while you got them.
No doubt, dude. No, I was thinking about you all weekend and late last week, and yeah, it's very, very sad. But I love that you got to celebrate life with her for the time that you did, and like 89 is awesome, man.
Yeah,
89
I
is
was gonna say I'll sign up for 89, man. It sounds good to me. Big Heat fan, by the way. So
good.
please, Pat Riley, wake up, do something for my grandma. She's
Yeah.
getting impatient. She's been impatient for a while, and now she's going to continue to be with my grandpa up there. They want big moves. They want a whale, and Pat hasn't done that since Jimmy Butler.
So they were like anti the Gabe Vincent type players.
No, my grandpa loved those guys. My
Yeah.
my, my grandma picked her favorites too, but they know how you need to win a championship. My grandma's like, when are we gonna get another star for Jimmy? Jimmy's doing too much, and then it was Bam, and now
Bam's a
Bam's doing
star.
too much.
Yeah.
Yeah, but she doesn't see the nuances of Bam. We need a
Oh,
bucket getter. We need a bucket getter. It's supposed to be Dame. Thanks a lot, Joe Cronin. But no, that's going to be a fun way to kind of get back into things. I think is just being able to just focus on what we need to catch up on. And, again, just knowing that my grandma would 100% want our heads down, and she would not want to be the reason why we are behind, knowing the way that she went about her business. So I do want to shout out real quick too, though, Griffin, 2 hits against Logan Webb. That
yeah.
was, he texted me. He's like, what do you got on Webb? I'm like, bro, good
Yeah.
luck. 50% chase on a split. See it up, but also if you take pitches at the knees, he might just clip the bottom of the zone. Good luck. 2 hits. Marlins end up winning that game that was started by McCagan. Is that how you say it?
McCacken, Darren
McCacken?
McCacken. Yeah,
Darren McCacken. He's been throwing the ball decent.
we
But
explained
that
this
was
to
fun to
him at this
watch.
baseball show. I told Peter I would Venmo him $5 if he nailed the pronunciation of the Miami Marlins starter. But like, dude, it was McCacken, Xavier Curry, John McMillan, Calvin Fauché. That was the Bad News Bears beating the $90 million sinker.
Yep. Yep. And that's why you
Hilarious.
play the game, man. That's why
Yeah.
you play the game. So you want to walk us through some of these topics here? We got a bunch to bounce around from. And that's how we're going to approach, especially when the promotions start to fizzle out. Really focus on the storylines. And trust me, there's a trillion of them throughout the minor leagues. And some things that you may not even pick up on, whether it's a guy kind of picking up a new pitch, trying something out. Maybe it's an organizational trend that I've picked up on or Jack has picked up on. Maybe it's an innings limit. Maybe there's so many different storylines throughout the minor leagues that I think in the final month really allows us to catch up on. And then, of course, we'll have the fall league starting to come together there too, where we'll have coverage once we start to get those names and maybe speculate on some of the names that could get there. But that'll be probably later this week. We're also going to check in on draft guys later this week as well. Cam Smith's still doing his thing, by the way, in high A and picking it. If you want to see some of the defensive video, go check out on Twitter. I put together some of the clips. He's the third baseman, baby. He's a better third baseman than Matt Shaw. He's going to go play there and he's going to stay there.
Yeah, but fewer homers as a Cub than as a Pelican. Like, he's just not hitting the ball out of the ballpark the same way he was in Myrtle Beach. So what's the point?
Yeah, right. If you're not going to hit a home run every single game, why bother?
What's the point in going to the ballpark if you're not going to hit it?
I agree.
I don't see it. I don't see the value in going to the ballpark there. But this guy's going to a new ballpark. I will say Reading, PA is not the top of my list in terms of, hey, I need to go on a vacation with my family to Reading, Pennsylvania. But Aidan Miller is going to Reading. And this was the first storyline that we needed to talk about. First round pick of the Phillies last year. Aidan Miller lit the world on fire in low A Clearwater this year. 39 games. He had an 884 OPS. He got up to Jersey Shore, the high A level, struggled for about the first 30. And then the last 28, he's been Aidan Miller again, and they deem him ready for Double A.
Yeah, that was the fun thing is, my immediate reaction was, whoa, that's a bit of a push. I'd known Miller was swinging it well of late, but I didn't really have the context of how long it had been that he really settled in at the high A level. And when you go back and look, you mentioned those like 30 games where it was pretty darn rough. I think there was first 30 games in high A, 200 batting average, I think a 654 OPS. But then in his subsequent 29 games, this guy was slashing 316, 386, 553. It's a 938 OPS. The home run's not there as much, quote unquote, only 4 home runs in those 29 games. But that's something I'm going to get into a little bit more in a moment. What I was really encouraged by is, I think where Aidan Miller is going to make a living is, the bat speed's plus, but the fact that you get the plus bat speed paired with pretty good, I'd say above average, feel for the barrel and barrel accuracy. So just hit tool projection there. And then also plus plate discipline. You pair those two things together with above average to borderline plus, bat speed. And, even if he's not hitting a ton of homers, you're going to get a lot of doubles and a lot of walks. In the early going to the high A stint for him, I think there was a little bit of that adjustment. Maybe pitchers were going after him a little bit more, or just simply putting it in the zone more. So it was, okay, it's not just being selective, it's being selective in the right spots. It's having a bit more of an approach instead of, hey, I just don't swing at balls. So he made that adjustment as he started to see more strikes. And then over the last 30 games of high A, he was chasing less than 20% of the time. So still generating those walks in an 11% clip, not striking out. And then we started to see that power shine through more and more because I found him to be a little bit more in that survival mode, which is totally normal, where he's just spraying hard hit balls, but just not elevating as much, just maybe looking to walk at points. And then other times maybe being a little bit expansive in advantage counts because you felt like he was maybe pressing, oh, am I going to see another good pitch? And then 2-0, you end up swinging at a pitch that you can't do much with. Like all those little things that seem to come together now. It actually makes all the sense in the world for him to get promoted to Double A, in my opinion. Why not? When you have the approach that he has, he just turned 20. The field of hit is obviously advanced for his age, and I don't know about the defensive side of things. I think they figure just, you know what, either way, he's getting reps at short, and it doesn't matter if he's in high A or double A. I still think he's shaky there. I want to give him a full off season to improve before I just, say, hey, he's not going to stick there. But I
Right.
also think there's probably going to be better infield coaches and a better situation there in double A to continue to develop defensively too. So I think he was ready. I don't think it was aggressive. I think it's eager, and I think it's there's some urgency to it, but I don't think it's aggressive. I actually think that this puts Miller on a timeline that he's earned, and I think this is the new normal for talented, polished young high school hitters.
So I want to go back to you talking about the difference between like low A and high A and the quality of pitching, like just seeing more stuff in the strike zone. We talk about the term uncompetitive a lot. So like uncompetitive versus competitive pitches. Low A, I feel like you see way more uncompetitive pitches.
Right.
And by that, yeah, it's like it's bad misses, but it's also bad miss, right down the pipe. Bad miss, right down the pipe. And guys are trying to find the strike zone instead of trying to find the outer half. In high A, that changes. There's a big difference between low A and high A. There's a big difference, I think, between every level in minor league baseball now that we have fewer levels. Like you
Yes.
scrap the advanced rookie, you scrap short season. Now you are incentivized and you're frankly obligated to push your prospects a little bit quicker because you have fewer levels. Like Aidan Miller, pre-COVID, pre-CBA, or reorganization. I don't think it was the CBA, would have probably spent the beginning of this year in advanced rookie or short season ball and then like got to low A this year. And that kind of sucks. I like that he's in double A now as a high school guy that is a year removed from being a first round pick. But he is seeing better pitching than like people before him really saw, and people before this generation of minor leaguers really saw. So I like that he settled in against competitive pitching, and now he's going to see the elevated version of competitive pitching. And
Yeah.
then when he gets to AAA, he sees guys that hardly make mistakes. And then you get to the big leagues and you see the best stuff you've ever seen, along with guys that have near perfect execution.
100%. And this is what I love about this is you get that taste of double, as we always talk about, and then he's going to get a good amount of games there, a couple weeks worth of games, maybe the postseason too. I don't know where Reading's at there in the standings. We keep up with everything, but probably
Title
besides
hunting.
the standings,
Minor league standings. Yeah.
couldn't give a crap. Sorry. I do once it's the last thing that we got going on in double A and which teams are still going. But other than that, I mean, but I think this is a great spot for him where get your feet wet. There is going to probably be that adjustment period again on the swing decisions. And okay, how do I consistently get into my power and continue to be Aidan Miller against even better pitching now? But he'll be 20 years old up until June 9th of next year, has the whole offseason to continue to work on preparing himself for double A next year. And if he's ready to go out of the gate next season, that's a guy that could be a September call-up candidate or, could, if he's really performing, force the Phillies' hand sooner than that. So yeah, you can see why the Phillies felt like this was an untouchable prospect for them because
Yeah.
they didn't see him as a lower level, far away teenager. They saw him as a guy that could be up by the end of next year, and could be a contributor very very soon. And yeah, there's some older guys that are going to be probably getting cast aside on the roster over the next handful of years, but they've still got that nucleus of stars who ain't going anywhere for a while. So your complementary pieces continue to filter their way up. So it's exciting from that lens. And congratulations to Aidan Miller on I think being one of the more impressive high schoolers we've seen I think in the last couple of years. He's up there with a lot of the more impressive performers I think with what he's been able to do. And we're going to talk a lot about how draft guys out of high school now because of the timing of the draft aren't
Yeah.
getting assignments to complex or whatever because those seasons are over and sometimes you don't see them. That's why we have this bridge league. We'll spend a whole portion of the draft check-in podcast on that.
Yeah.
But the teams that are aggressive will throw their guys into low A and see how they do. And I think it's been really impressive to see how Miller's handled it.
Can I tell you that I asked like 4 or 5 people about this bridge league over
Mm-hmm.
the weekend? I asked 4 or 5 people. None of them had any idea what I was talking about.
Dude, it's like one of the best kept secrets, I think. I'm gonna do some digging now that I just got down to Florida. And that was the other crazy part is getting that call literally as I'm boarding the flight to move to Florida. I was already on my way moving to Florida when I went to Denver. I am really excited be able to just kind of go canvas the backfields and go to the, all the different spots in Florida here to see some of these younger players. But it's not like there's a publicly available bridge league schedule. So I got to reach out to some scouts or whatever and just be like, what's the deal here? When
Where
do I
can I
go
go
and
when?
watch? Yeah.
Yeah, when,
Uh,
where, who, why, what, how, all that
to
stuff.
that point, that just reminded me of another headline I forgot to mention. Caminiti made his pro debut
Tell me
yesterday.
about it.
Um, he shoved.
Oh,
Braves first round pick that we couldn't believe fell to the Braves. If you remember, top prep arm in the drafts, right? Like this guy's nasty, 6'3" lefty, just turned 18 years old, legit less than a month ago. They let him throw 40 pitches against Columbia in low A, 3 innings, 3 hits, 1 earned run, no walks, 4 Ks. Fastball averaged 93.8 miles an hour. I mean, he looked as advertised, which is really cool to see. And I honestly just wasn't sure if we were going to see him on the field this year in like an actual full season ball, like organized setting. The
yeah.
slider was sliding, and the fastball had some decent life to it. So it was cool to just see Caminiti look as advertised in his pro debut: 40 pitches, 30 strikes. Well, hopefully we'll get a few more starts from him. But again, I don't really know what their plans are, and obviously being in low A, that season's over very soon. So do
Yeah.
they bring him up for like a postseason start somewhere? I don't know. Does he end up being one of those weird, unique fall league candidates just because they think he's so fun and he is based out of Arizona? Wouldn't shock me. But you never know nowadays. It would surprise me, but it wouldn't totally shock me. Regardless, exciting to see him on the mound.
Yeah, you like when the slider slides. That usually is a good mark for a slider. But the Braves all of a sudden, man, like they have a pitching stable in the minor leagues.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them are on the shelf, don't get it twisted. But like Caminiti, AJ Smith-Shawver, Hurston Waldrop. AJ and Hurston Waldrop are both in AAA. Owen Murphy on the shelf, but Murphy looked awesome before hitting the shelf. J.R. Ritchie is there. Drew Hackenberg had a hell of a season in Double A, and now he's up in AAA. Like all of a sudden, Blake Burkhalter too. Don't forget
Our
about
cultures
him.
look
He's
good.
back
Yeah.
from Tommy John. Like they've got pitchers, and then you have a pop up in Drake Baldwin. You have a relative pop up in Nacho Alvarez too. This looks fine all of a sudden.
Yep.
When we were talking about the Braves as a bottom 10 at least farm
Yep.
system in baseball coming into this year.
It's what they do, and Richie's look great coming off of TJ. So I mean, yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that. Like, Brave system solid.
Yeah.
Like, as much as they may not shine on the prospect rankings or whatever, there's a plenty of big league projectable talent here. And that's not even like I know he got his doors blown off in his big league debut, but Nacho Alvarez is a legitimate prospect now too, and a guy that really put it together this season as well and is very young. So they've got plenty of fun pieces. I'm excited to see how this Brave system continues to, you know, just kind of develop because plenty of these guys aren't going to get rushed to the big leagues and should develop into nice pieces.
Speaking of fun, couple of sluggers that we got to talk about in their month of August. Bryce Eldridge of the San Francisco Giants, Las Montes of the Seattle Mariners. Let's start with Bryce Eldridge. 25 games in August, a 376 clip with a 1232 OPS. He walked 18 times, 7 doubles, 9 homers, 24 driven in 25 games. And then you go to Las Montes, you go, down the down the leaderboard a little bit when I'm looking at total bases. Eldridge was fourth in minor league baseball in total bases in the month of August. Las Montes is in the top 20. 20 games, hit 411 with a 1253 OPS, 7 homers, 21 driven in, 15 walks in 20 games. These guys are doing like exactly what we've asked them to do. They're both really, really young. They're both in high A, and they're both two of the best hitters in high A.
And they're 2 days apart in age, I think.
Come on.
And they're both like built like power forwards. Like it's crazy. It's crazy the
Eldridge is more
similarities.
of like the pick and pop stretch for. Montes is like back to the bucket. I'm going to bully you like DeMarcus Cousins style.
He's more the old school bigger man. Yeah, I
Right.
agree. But it's like they heard our back and forth about, like who's a better prospect because it felt like, oh, Bryce Eldridge 2 homer game, then Las Montes 2 homer game. And then like they were just matching each other. And that's what happens, I think, when both guys are just absolutely mashing.
Yeah.
But Las Montes, I had a crazy stretch where I think I sent you the tweet and I know you shared it and I know it made your day. That's why I forwarded it over to you. I only send you stuff that's gonna make you happy.
Right.
But there was a stretch, I think it was the 31st. So from I think from the 28th to the 31st. And I don't like to find like individual EVs too much. Like, of course, you can just get so much more from large samples, but I do like to highlight things that are like cool and really show you just maybe shine a light on the capabilities that a player has already at 19 years old. This was a 3 game stretch for Las Montes. He had 7 hits, 4 home runs, 9 driven in, and 2 strikeouts. Let me just take you through each of these 7 hits: 106 mile per hour home run, 106 mile per hour home run, a 94 mile per hour double, 105 mile per hour single, 110 mile per hour home run, 93 mile per hour single, and 109 mile per hour home run. Uh, he's starting to light up the EVs. Remember we were talking about it? Like you could tell he was just trying to hit more and just trying to be more of that. Like, okay, I know I can put up 115, 116, 117, and upwards of that, but can I be a hitter? And he has improved so much in the bat to ball department. But now I think we're seeing him get so comfortable there where it's like, okay, I trust my mechanics. I trust where I'm at from a bat to ball perspective here. Of course, he's going to strike out. Like it's going to happen. He's going to be a guy that strikes out. Unfortunately, that's the reality of it. But I think now realizing, okay, I can make enough contact now to be productive. Let me lean into that power a little bit more. And in August, his 90th percentile exit velocity was almost 108 miles an hour.
That's
So
ridiculous.
clearly, you know,
Who is 108 at the big league level?
who has 108 at the big league
Yeah.
level? Oof, that's a good question. Um,
Like that's probably what, 95th percentile?
I'd say that's probably like 90. Yeah, I'd say that's about 92nd, 93rd percentile, maybe a little bit below that. Like
Okay.
there's like you get to that grouping of like all the guys that just destroy
Yeah.
baseballs, and then
Like
you realize there's like
Jordan Ohtani. Yeah.
yeah, even Vladdy's like 111. Like it's crazy some of those guys. Soto, but it's up there to that point. Like it's definitely in the comfortably within the top 10% of Major League Baseball. I could pull up that leaderboard. I should do that so people can relate it to, the major league side of things. But that paired with the fact that he has been very selective, I think really helps him. I think just lead into that 3 true outcome power hitter that probably has a little bit more bat to ball than you'd think. With Eldridge, though, like maybe not lighting it up from an EV perspective as consistently high, but honestly, it's pretty close. And then you end up looking at the average EV, it's like exactly the same. And the 90th is actually not far off of that. Now that I'm looking at it, it's about the same. It's about 107.5. So the thing that floors me about Eldridge is not striking out really at all. And that's the thing that, he's 6'7" and elevating consistently, walking. But this dude in his last 25 games has only struck out 20 times. That's an 18% strikeout rate and a 15.6% walk rate. I mean, that's what really stands out to me there. And with him, another guy that huge, long limbs, massive dude, but seems to have really figured out how to control his body at such a young age, right? Usually I liken 19-year-old big hitters to like baby draft. Same thing with the big tall pitchers. And there's nothing about either of these guys that says baby draft. It's pretty remarkable. Maybe if you watch Laz in the outfield, you could see a little baby draft out there. But who cares? When you look at Eldridge though, offensively, man, what really also stands out to me is every bomb you see on Twitter, it feels like is dead center. Like he's working the middle of the field, and then if you try to get inside on him, he's turning it around. So the ability to be short to the ball and efficient to the ball, but then also still always have the thought of working middle. He's so advanced for a 19-year-old power hitter, and he looks it too. He looks like he's 30 years old.
Yeah, I know. There's something about his level of balance, and it's such a common comp because he trained with what, Jordan Alvarez, right? Isn't that like the whole baby Jordan
Laz
thing?
did, yeah. Montes
Yeah.
did, yes.
But like the thing that jumps out to me about Montes too, and then Eldridge as well. Like Eldridge, it just feels like he's geared for takeoff at all times. I have you seen a batted ball on the ground from Bryce Eldridge? Like I'm sure they exist, but in terms of what I've seen out in the Twitter sphere, I don't see line drive. I see majestic home runs all
Yeah,
the time.
the ground balls are usually torched. Like that's the
Yeah.
thing. So it's usually just a ball that got too deep on him, but he got a good swing off on it, and it's torched. And
So
that's why I think we're seeing him hit for such a high average.
Right. So bucking the baby giraffe trend, like you talk about balance. I think balance has a lot to do with bucking that baby giraffe trend because a lot of the time, you can find guys that are somewhat out of sorts. Eldridge is balanced, but like Las Montes, the way that he gets into balls is very Jordan-esque in the way that he is so balanced all the way through. Like Jordan is never off kilter, and I feel like that's what we see with Las Montes too.
Finally, I say finally because like it's just what it's funny because there were some moves that I just was like, man, if he can shore those up. And every time I check in, I'm like, please, please, because this guy could be an animal if he can just shore up some of these extraneous moving parts. I mean, if you think about Jordan, there's no wasted movement there. You
There's
don't
none.
need it. You don't need any. And then we talked about it, like finding the right spot for his hands to start so they don't have to travel very far. So finding the right kind of weight distribution. For guys that are this big, your setup is so much more important. Whereas other guys, it doesn't matter. You move around, you get to the spot you need to get to. It is harder for these big hitters to get to the spot that they need to get to because it's just longer limbs, it's more moving parts, and it's just harder to control overall. And every wasted movement is more important because these guys are naturally going to swing and miss more. Laz found that. I found the setup adjustment. I saw the weight distribution adjustment, the pre-swing moves. And that's where like we joked about like, oh, he worked out with Jordan's coach, whatever. That's where I think you can maybe see that tutelage kind of shining through where it's like that might be Laz. I don't want to, give credit maybe where it shouldn't be given, but also whatever it is, whether he's leaning on the right people, whether it's him himself, he clearly has the ability to make these adjustments at a young age, which always makes me more excited about a hitter. One more thing on Eldridge, and I want to see how this looks for Montes too, because they're both obviously left-handed hitters. What's interesting is that this is actually very interesting. It bodes better for Laz, but also highlights how dominant Bryce Eldridge has been against right-handed pitching. The other testament to Laz's body control, and you talked about the balance. Usually, the tell is going to be how is that guy performing left on left.
Yeah.
Laz has been very good left on left. 822 OPS this season against lefties, but his last 30 games against lefties, he's got a 983 OPS. So this is a dude that really handles left on left well. Eldridge, on the other hand, not as much. That's been a challenge for him where, on the season, he has a 596 OPS against lefties. But what's funny is you flip that around and say, okay, worst case scenario, he doesn't hit lefties that well. What he's doing to righties right now is absolutely absurd. Over his last 30 games against righties, holy crap. He's slashing 429, 523, 905 with 20 walks and 19 strikeouts.
It's pretty
So,
good.
yeah, pretty damn good. So, Laz, obviously, you want that guy that can be in the lineup every single day.
Right.
But I think these are both positives because you hope Eldridge can get better against lefties and go from there. But this is so dominant against righties that you can dream on like legit superstar potential against righties. Laz already showing that he can be in the lineup every day is really impressive as well. So both these guys, I mean, it's crazy how polished these players are at such a young age. These kids coming up now are just a different breed.
No doubt. Let's go to another Mariner here. And a guy that I know you want to kind of dive into because Cole Young is performing well in the month of August. Cole Young with Double-A Arkansas has played, let's see, 27 games in August. He slashed 320, 436, 402, five extra base hits. He drove in 10, and 838 OPS. So the clip is there. That follows a month of July where he hit 203 in 18 games. He hit 263 in 27 games in June. He was really good in May. He had a 5-homer May. Since then, Cole Young has 4 homers since May 31st. Where's the power gone? Like the clip looks awesome. Cool. Great. There are a lot of other beigeish. I think beige is the right color here. There are a lot of other beige flags here with
Yes.
Cole Young.
Well, and remember, this is a guy. So the a fun one, I think a fun piece at the end of the year, and we'll do an episode on it too. Is just kind of like where we were wrong. I always think that's a fun like circle back. Hey, why was I maybe overly excited about this player? What happened to make that go awry? It could just be simple as injury. It could be as simple as, hey, I overvalued X and undervalued Y. I think it's just a really fun philosophical conversation too, but it's also a great way to just kind of circle back and say, hey, if we're gonna pat ourselves on the back when we nail it, you also gotta highlight the areas where we were maybe deficient. Because I know people use some of this info for fantasy baseball purposes or whatever, and like, hey, maybe there's a bias that you'll pick up here. Maybe I love short like slap hitters, which I generally don't. So that's my frustration here. So here's the interesting thing with Cole Young, and I wouldn't say this is a guy that has totally been off the mark this year, because you look at the season and it's been a fine
It's
year,
fine.
but 777 OPS. But what really prompted me to dive back into it last night, and then actually I was surprised to see it go the other way, meaning that I saw the numbers over the last month, so I'm like, okay, let me see what he's done here. And funny enough, like I actually don't know if the changes that he made are conducive to like sustainable success. He's seeing
You
balls
left
fall.
you left discouraged almost.
Yeah.
Or you were like, "Hey, this is good. Let me dive into why it's good." Oh, wait.
Yeah, which is weird. That's rarely going to happen, right? You see a guy's numbers jump, and you actually are still equally as concerned. I mean, I've watched this guy change his setup now and his load and moves like several times, even through this strong stretch.
Yeah.
Uh, the EVs are down now because if you look at his moves, like he's starting with his bat. Well, first, it waggles like crazy now. And I just think that's so hard to repeat. It's the fact that he's able to put the ball in play pretty consistently is a testament to, I think, just how good his hands are. And that's a big reason why I've always liked him, is also the swing decisions, right? He's running a chase rate below 20%. But when you look at the EVs, average EVs dropped now to 86 miles per hour. And I don't think he's put a ball in the air since August 1st above 103 miles per hour. So this adjustment that he made, he's starting, kind of more with his hands already where like deep into his stance, close to his slot, and then he wags the bat a lot. I don't know why he does that. I don't know if it's kind of like this chase Utley, stay loose, stay fluid thing right before the pitch comes in, but I think it can be a little bit disruptive, or at least can make it hard for his body to get into the spot that he wants to be in, because so much of the focus and kind of energy is being allocated towards the hands there. But I feel like he's playing Pepper up there. Like there's no lower half involvement. That's kind of a problem. The reason why I really like Cole Young when he's coming up is we were seeing him pop 110s. And I'm like, okay, well, a guy with that field of hit and that approach, and I think the ability to stick it short is popping 110s. I mean, you can dream on the progression here. It was to me like the McGonagall type of cloth. But now you're seeing still like iffy contact rates. Like I think again, you're seeing the bat to ball and the ability to spoil tough pitches. And I've always loved the out of zone contact ability, and that's what really stands out with him. Like anything out of the zone, he's spoiling.
Yeah.
But if you're not 90% in zone contact, you got to hit the ball harder.
Yeah.
And over that span where it has been good, and I watched every single hit. I watched all 35 of his hits since August 1st. They're all just kind of almost every single one of them have just been slapped around, aside from 2 home runs, I think, that left the bat at 100 miles per hour each of them, which is fine. But I just feel like it's very slap oriented, and I was just expecting him to go the opposite direction, right? Like I have the field to hit. How can I engage my lower half more and tap into more power? I loved his load and his moves before. I don't really love these moves. So yes, it's been a really nice stretch, but I almost feel like this is kind of a band-aid. And I do think that against better pitching, or just over the course of 162 or 140, whatever it may be, the lack of impact and the lack of quality contact will end up catching up to him. And I don't know why he made these moves or these adjustments, but I think right now they're probably feeling validated, and maybe they work. Maybe I'm off on this one, but it just doesn't look right, and the underlying doesn't look great either. Only a 77% in zone contact rate, which is crazy because he's at 84% out of zone contact rate. Like that doesn't even make sense. To me, that's just a guy that doesn't seem like he's ready to get his best swing off. It feels like he's starting in defense mode. Like that's the thing for me with Cole Young. It's like it feels like he's always in his two-strike approach. I'm seeing 2-0 swings where it's like just shooting a ball the other way, ground ball to shortstop. And again, I think I've never really seen 84% out of zone contact, 77% in zone contact. For reference, like average out of zone contact is like 54%, and average in zone contact's about like 82, 83% at that level. Like he's below average in zone and elite out of zone. Like this guy's clearly in like defense mode at all times, which I just don't really get.
Yeah. From what you're saying now and from what you've said historically about Cole Young, I feel like a lot of the appeal that made him a top 30 prospect in baseball was that he had a well-rounded profile like everywhere, and he's losing that well-rounded nature to his profile, at least offensively.
I just don't know where the impact's going to come from. When that average EV drops to like 86 miles per hour,
Yeah.
and again, this was a guy that was popping 110s, 111s, and
Yeah.
your highest air EV since we've really seen this change is 103, and it wasn't barely in the air; it was like at 4 degrees. I hope I'm wrong, and like this guy I've been higher on, so maybe this is people kind of saying, hey, yeah, maybe this is where he always was supposed to be, maybe. But the weird like juxtaposition of being better out of the zone than in the zone to me, and then he watched the swings. Seems like the adjustments he made was to be ready for everything and put the ball in play, which is great, but you got to have a little bit more violence, and the flashes of violence are why I loved him as a prospect. So nice stretch. Think he's really proven that he can put the bat on the ball and not strike out and put the ball in play. But and that'll guarantee him a big league role. But for him to be the guy that I thought he could be, which is a consistent above average big league regular, he's going to need to get that lower half more involved, and I think make some moves to tap into more impact.
Couple more guys before we get into kind of rapid fire on the September call ups, because we've talked about all those guys already that have been called up on September 1 and the couple days before that. Noah Schultz has hit 80 and 2/3 innings in the minor league so far this year. Schultz has a 2.23 ERA. His month of August, 3 and 2/3 innings, 60 pitches, shutout. 3 and a third, 64 pitches, 1 run. 3 and 2/3, 63 pitches, no runs. 4 innings, no earned, 64 pitches. 4 innings, 1 hit, no runs, 57 pitches. He's kind of just doing exactly what he's done all year. He has not gone what's his high in innings this year? He's always going 4. His high is 4, and he's done this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 times. He's started how many games so far this year? Noah Schultz has started 21 games. He's gone 4 innings, 14 of those 21 times.
Crazy.
Yeah, it's awesome that he's at 80 and 2/3 innings. This is Tink Hence with a better pitching prospect.
Yeah.
They have the leash on. Like, I'm thinking the kid leash. What was the other term? Like, they have the training wheels on, I guess. Yeah, but
Yeah,
I
didn't
was
they say
thinking,
like baby gloves?
I guess, but like the training wheels, I think is the
Training
correct
wheels is
term.
the best comparison because he's pedaling and he's pedaling real quick.
Right. He's awesome. And it's like, you probably don't need the training wheels anymore, but also, like, are you old enough to ride a bike on 2 wheels? For some reason, I was thinking about the kid leashes that you see at Disney
Oh,
World.
those are terrible.
I always joke with my girlfriend. I'm like, I can't wait for my kid to have a kid leash just in public everywhere. I'm going to get them like the bluey kid leash, and I'm going to yank them back when they start going elsewhere.
You're gonna get some comments for that one. There's a really funny Modern Family episode where just they're getting shamed for doing that to their
Oh, they
kid.
had Lily on the leash.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
had Willie on the leash. Just too good. That's
But
good stuff. Uh,
getting back to Noah Schultz, I know you posed the question before we started recording, like, is it time to taper him off, shut him down? Probably yes, because you're not going to let him go 6.
well, and they said going into the year, right? What 75-ish innings was the number,
Yeah.
and you said what we're at 80, 85,
We're at 80 and
84,
2/3.
80 and 2/3. What's interesting though is and I'm a believer in. I was actually talking to Jeff Conine about this at the game because obviously he's more old school and he'd be the first to tell you that, but he's also very aware of what's happening in Major League Baseball with the injuries. And I was like, yeah, don't you think we could just be more responsive like to our bodies and to the players and especially with prospects? Like it doesn't have to be this clear cut because his thing was why do we have to predetermine these innings totals when it's not really an exact science? I actually agree with that. Like you can kind of put out these parameters, this outline. I think that you can follow going into the year. But if a guy says, "Hey, my elbow's bothering me," of course, then you're going to adjust. You're not going to say, "Oh, we said 75 innings." So I think it could also go the other way too, where if a guy feels really fresh and still feels really good, and the velo looks great and everything, I'm not saying push him like crazy, but maybe
Right.
you can push him an extra 10, 15 innings. And I think that's what the White Sox might be doing here because, again, they tentatively said mid 70s, somewhere around that range. And I thought maybe after his August 17th start, we'd see him start to taper off. He goes 3 2/3. His velocity dropped, and not a big issue. Average velo in that start was 94 miles per hour. For most of the year, he was closer to 96, 95.5, 96. But then he comes back out next time, 4 innings, 64 pitches, sits 95. And then this last time out, a couple days ago, he goes 4 innings and 57 pitches, sits 96. And he hadn't averaged 96 since June 1st. So, or since June 16th, excuse me. So if this is a guy that says, hey, I'm feeling great, obviously don't push him too far, but why cap him to the degree that, he's going to have to build up even more next year? And guess what? And this is why I think we moved the goalpost a little bit. He's going to get to the big leagues and then he's going to be shoving. And there's a very real scenario. And then you're going to say, oh, but he never has thrown this many innings because, last year he only threw this many. Like, yeah. It helps you for the future, too, to not push a guy too far at that point. And there's going to be no bigger innings leap than the big leagues when you're playing a full season, hopefully staying healthy, like we saw with Garrett Crochet. And that's usually where I think the guy's arms go, is because at that point, it's like, okay, you're making this mega leap. Yes, there's damage done before and all that stuff. But all that to say, like, I was initially thinking about we'd go into this conversation saying, hey, maybe we should start looking at shutting down Noah Schultz. I think he should get 2 more starts at least here. Yeah. And just finish this thing out. And if he does that, I mean, this was a very successful season in every sense of the word, not just from the, numbers, which have been dominant, but I think also from the perspective that he has, knock on wood, really had no issues staying on the field, pitching and this was always going to be the parameters. And I think they're good parameters again, because this guy had elbow inflammation before, and he's a high school 6'9" lefty. Feels like everything has gone perfectly to plan. And this is where you can adjust a little bit and say, hey, we said 75, we're going to go 88, maybe 90. That's fine. And then call it there. And that'll be right about through to the end of the season. So we'll see. It doesn't sound like they've been saying anything about cutting him off. And I mean, I think this guy has earned the opportunity to push closer to 90, and what a year it's been for him.
There are 2 more turns left in the Double-A season. It's not like we're talking about another month and we got to shut him down and have him just kind of hang out for a month doing nothing. There are 2 more weeks left in the Double-A season. Let him get 6 days rest between starts. Have him go Friday. Who gives a shit, dude? Like, you adjust your Birmingham rotation, especially with no Jairo Iriarte, who we're going to get to a little bit later when we go rapid fire through the September call-ups. But, dude, like, you can cater your rotation around Noah Schultz. You see it all the time with all these organizations. Your prized pitching prospect gets precedent on when he throws. It's not like, oh, well, this guy's got to throw Friday, so Schultz has to lose a day of rest. No, like, give him 6 days rest and he's fine on 2 starts. If the velo is there and we don't know him, we don't know what he's saying. If he says that he feels good, you let him go again. There are layers to the bullets used by pitchers. I view them in 3 layers. Bullets over the course of a season, bullets over the course of a game, bullets over the course of an inning. He clearly hasn't had the bullets in an inning problem.
No.
He clearly hasn't been allowed to have the bullets in a game problem because he's only maxing out at 4 innings. So, like, you're really only concerned about bullets in a season, and that is the feel thing as opposed to the other 2. The other 2, we have set arbitrary numbers for max bullets. 100 pitches, that's the max. Yeah. 35 in an inning, 30 in an inning, that's the max.
And that was Niners' argument, which I actually, like, the more I think about it, because those numbers are so normal to us, because those have been hammered in our heads pretty much since we early
for a decade, man. For a decade.
But, when you really zoom out, it's like, well, 100 is just a round number, and they're like, yeah, why 100? Why not 90? Why not 110? Like, it's just interesting. And I know there's studies and things behind it, but it's also just the number 100. I can add one more caveat to that, like one more, I guess, designation for bullets: stressful bullets. Like, high stress. And I think that goes into the, like, long inning thing like that. And I know that they've got rules around that and parameters there too. And I think that's another good parameter to have with your minor league arms. Like, if a guy's 30 pitches in an inning, like, just take him out. Like, if he's a prospect for you, no need. Just run it back in 5 days. But Schultz has been low stress. Like, it has been low stress outings here for him. Pretty much every single time out there, he's allowing 3 or less hits. I think he's only allowed 4 or more hits in 3 outings this year. And I
The,
understand that he's only going 4 innings,
yeah,
but
but
he's
dude,
going
the
four
last
innings to your point, like almost every single time.
yeah,
So
and that's
that's
the thing,
impressive.
man. Like the last month, he can focus on mechanics and get through 4 scoreless. Like
Hmm.
those guys are so few and far between. You go into survival mode. It's like, oh shit, I'm seeing another top 100 prospect in baseball. Like I better not get taken 440 feet. Versus Schultz is like, let me focus on my glove hand today. And
Yep.
then he's 4 scoreless with 2 hits allowed and 6 Ks.
3 home runs allowed all season.
Yeah, come on.
Really, if there's one nitpick on him, and it's because he's 6'9" and he likes to pitch inside, because he gets run on the fastball. He's hit 12 batters. That's half as it's more than half of the batters he's walked this year. That's just
Mizorowski hits 12 in a week.
yeah.
Like,
I know. That's what I'm saying. Like that's the only like slight command thing where you can be like, oh, like he just runs it in a little bit too much. So you move that aside. I mean, guys are just never going to get on base. 3 home runs allowed, 23 free passes, 104 strikeouts. What a year for Schultz. And I think to our point here, like I think he's going to have a couple more starts. It doesn't sound like they're going to slow him down. If they do, I get it. He's already exceeded that, but like he's been going mostly on 7 days rest anyways. 2 more turns around the rotation, let him go. And now we don't have to do the, hey, he got shut down early thing. He can feel like he pitched a full year. And I think that is valuable.
yep. Two more guys before we get to the September call ups here. Chase Dollander, since going to Double A Hartford, has been sensational. 7 starts for Dollander, 37 and 2/3. He's got a 1.43 ERA, 37 and 2/3, 6 earned runs. He's allowed just 1 homer, and he's faced how many guys here? 152. He's punching out 11.5 per nine. He's walking fewer than 3.5 per nine. Dollander this year between High A Spokane, Double A Hartford has a 2.34 ERA. In the year that made him pitcher one at Tennessee, he had a 2.39 ERA. So he's having a better year this year than the one that sent us into the 2023 season saying, oh, he might be better than this Air Force guy that's at LSU.
Yeah.
Think about that for a minute, dude. Like he's performing. I wouldn't say he's exceeding expectations because I think we had high expectations coming into this year, but like he underwhelmed last year. There's no doubt about it. He had an ERA close to 5, and again, he was pitcher 1 going into the college season.
I think he's validating our most bullish beliefs. And like, look, I won't speak for you, but I was a little concerned that he might not be able to attain that ceiling up until I spoke to him again. Like, and maybe that's just like a natural bias that occurs when you sit down with a really thoughtful and I think intelligent player that knows exactly what they need to do. But to that
Yep.
point, like that is going to make me more confident. Like I've talked to plenty of players where I don't think that they made me feel worse about it, but it's not going to be the same level of, oh wow, he's got it nailed down. Like I didn't even have to ask Chase about specific things. Like it was one of the easiest interviews I've ever done because he just led me right into what I already wanted to ask. And some things that, I didn't want to like pry too hard at because, you never want to be like, hey, I noticed you struggled to like stay close in your delivery and it affected this or that. Like he led right into it himself. He's like, yeah, these are things that I was looking at in my delivery. This I think killed my vert and my fastball. This I think made my slider less effective. And these are the things that I'm focused on. And then you watched him apply that specifically. The other thing is, you'll hear guys talk about things that they want to work on and then they go out on the field and you just don't see that converting. When you
Yeah.
see a guy doing exactly what he said he was going to do and knowing exactly what the issues were mechanically and then
Yeah.
leaning into it and then the success follows, how do you not fully buy into that? If you go back and listen to that Dollander interview from the spring, like he fully knew exactly what he needed to do from a mechanical standpoint. He's still working on the pitch usage standpoint, but he's aware of it. Like he talked about how excited he was about the development of the changeup, and the quality of it is phenomenal. Like it is a great pitch. It's just consistency. And then he was very excited about mixing in that curveball that he had worked on as well. So you've seen those. And I think that's the last piece of the things that he talked about in that interview that probably need to be applied a little bit more
Yeah.
consistently. But the thing is they don't really need to because his fastball is back to being elite. And that was the big issue, right? How is Chase Dollander's fastball getting hit? This thing is elite. And that was where it was cool to just hear from him why he felt like he was losing vert. He's got it all back. It's a 5.5 release. He's getting 17 inches of vert from there, which is already, well above average. And then it's at 96.5 miles per hour. but there's something about the way he releases the fastball that or just the pitches in general. It just seems like it's tough for hitters to pick up. So you have already the characteristics that are great. You have the release aspect, you have the velocity aspect, and that's why over his last 5 AA starts, he's only allowed 3 earned runs in 29 and a thirds innings. But on the fastball alone, and this is a pitch that he's throwing more than 60% of the time, in that span, so over his last 5 starts, opponents are hitting 0.98 against his fastball. Like, that's a pitch that he cannot. We talk about high fastball usage guys. This is a guy that can throw his fastball 60% of the time and be just fine.
Yeah, no doubt about it, man. And like the thing that I took away from that conversation that you did at that signing event in spring training was the fluidity that he was trying to get back to, because that's something that we IDs and we
Athlete.
like legitimately just said it. Yeah, like be an athlete, be more athletic. You know, he was an athlete his sophomore year and then he wasn't his junior year. He was still obviously like really good. And he ran into first inning issues. I remember seeing the first inning versus rest of game splits. The first inning was weird. Maybe he was like hyper focused on him and like the mechanics in the first inning, and then he was like, "Oh man, like time to just snap into being the athlete that I am." But it feels like he is just moving so fluidly now, and I love tuning in when he's on the hill for Hartford. I love it because
Yeah.
it's just like you see a comfortable, stuffy guy, and I'm so in on the comfortable, stuffy guy. He's going to pitch for the Rockies next year in like
Yes.
May. And I feel very confident that he'll be up there in May and like performing pretty damn well. He may run into a couple blowups if he just doesn't have a certain pitch at altitude that day. But
Yeah.
I'm so excited to see this guy trust it. In the words of Bowden Francis, trust your shit and let it eat at the big
Yeah.
league level.
100%. And I like that he has more options now too. You mentioned some days he might not have one of the pitches at altitude. If the changeup's not there, he has the curveball.
Yeah.
If that's not there, he can always rest on the, hey, I'll be fastball heavy and just hope it plays up today even more so. And there's going to be days like you said, if the slider's not there and he's very very fastball dependent, guys will cheat for it. But overall, I expect him to be pretty darn good, pretty darn consistently, and he will be up next year.
Last but not least on the prospect storylines is Jackson Baumeister. I heard the broadcast say Baumeister, which would totally throw a wrench in my life.
Wow.
We're going to still go with Baumeister because like I feel like that's right. Jackson Baumeister in Bowling Green. First 24 innings as a Rays prospect. 11 hits, 3 earned as a 1.13 ERA, 35 Ks, 4 walks in 24 innings. Since the trade deadline, he's been as good a pitcher at the minor league level as we've had. We
Yeah.
talked about him. Like, I know the numbers were not great as a Seminole, but he had that prototype Florida State Friday guy vibe that just made sense. He jumped into the O's system. In Aberdeen, he was good, man. He had a 306 at 18 starts. But then he goes to Tampa and levels up. They do this shit. Brody Hopkins is slinging it, and Baumeister's slinging it. This is so much fun.
Do you notice that when the trade went down, so his final start in Aberdeen was July 21st. He didn't throw again until August 3rd in a game.
Huh.
And when he threw again on August 3rd, Arsenal looked a little different. And that's why I wanted to talk about him is he looks like a slightly different pitcher. Because he always, to me, I knew it made sense that the Rays were excited about him. A very solid template to start with, right? You're talking about a guy that gets 7 feet of extension, that sits pretty much 93, 94 with the fastball, smooth delivery. Lance Brzezowski replied to me on Twitter, and actually, now I can't unsee it, that the delivery reminds him a little bit of Max Scherzer.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, Scherzer releases it a little bit lower, but if you watch like the mannerisms and everything, there's a lot of similarities there. And just repeats his move so well. And he already had shown the feel for a slider, a curveball, a changeup, and that four seamer had good ride. And I think they just kind of looked at the arsenal across the board and said, okay, how can we optimize this? Because there's a lot of different ways that we can go with this. And since he's joined the Rays org, he started throwing the curveball harder. And I think that's made a huge difference. Where if you look at some of the swings,
Yeah.
I mean, last time out, he punched out 11 in 7 innings. The swings he was getting on his curveball were comical. Like just guys looking totally, totally uncomfortable and either buckling and taking it or just giving you a half-hearted swing. And the whiff numbers are off the chart since then. But he's throwing it like about 2 ticks harder. And that makes a big difference. 75, 76 versus 76. It's really more 77 to 79 on a depthy curveball makes a big difference. Then he also adjusted his release height slightly in his release point where it's a little bit higher, but then he's getting more vert. And the changeup, he's able to mimic that a lot better off of it because I think he was tipping it a little bit. So now the changeup looks disgusting off of it. And then he's added this cutter that's a really good bridge, I think, to his breaking balls, where this cutter at 87 is a good bridge to the slider at 85 and in the curveball now that's closer to 80. And that cutter has been a weapon for him too. So now you've got this above average four seamer with the characteristics and extension that he gets. You have this curveball that looks like it's playing like a plus pitch if he can command it more consistently. I think now that he's throwing it harder, it's a little bit more inconsistent from a strike perspective, but looks way nastier stuff wise. This changeup that now plays like a pitch that can flash above average. This cutter that all of a sudden looks like it's a solid offering to mix in there, and a slider as well that I think is a good like taste breaker. This is a really complete and fun arsenal, and I think the Rays, did what they do. And I don't like to give too much credit. Like we always joke about not doing the Rays got him, so he's better now thing. And have the confirmation bias with it. Oh, he had a nice stretch because he went to the Rays, so it's the Rays. This is a tangible adjustment in the TrackMan data, a pitch that he wasn't really throwing, and the results have followed. I think they saw a guy that they probably loved out of the draft, couldn't grab, and were really excited to acquire. And I'm really buying into the adjustment with his pitch arsenal and some of the characteristics here. I think this is just the beginning of what's going to be a really hot stretch for him to finish the year. And my perspective on him, I think, is starting to shift if he can do this a couple more times. In true call-up fashion, we went 56 minutes on all the other storylines. So we will do September call-ups and all of that good stuff tomorrow, which I'm excited because there's some interesting storylines there. Dominguez has been quite the topic amongst Yankee fans.
Yeah, I'd say so.
We want to get into that. Like, I really want to discuss why certain prospects weren't promoted, why certain prospects were, and then others that could still get the opportunity in a couple weeks that still are candidates, so to speak. And this also gives us another day or two to potentially see if a few more call-ups or promotions come through the door. But again, as always, we apologize for going long on what was initially promised in the intro, but I really did want to get into these storylines as well, which there's a lot of interesting things going on in the minors, like Baumeister. Now I don't know which one to say.
I know
but I'm gonna say Baumeister. I'm gonna say Baumeister.
I'm gonna go with Baumeister. Let's just change it each time.
Yes.
Until he comes on and he tells us.
Until he tells us face to face. But no, like the little things like that, getting into the nitty gritty is always fun. But we'll talk about September call-ups, maybe a few other storylines, and then check in on the draft guys later this week. As always, thank you for listening. If you could leave a rating, help us grow the show, subscribe on YouTube, that would be great. A written review, also very much appreciated. Also can get your Just Baseball merch in the episode description, call-up merch as well. A lot of new stuff in the store that we're very pumped about. Look forward to talking prospects with you tomorrow.